Okay, good evening. Oh, that's nice. You get a real, yeah. See, the computer doesn't answer back. It's nice to have real people here that actually say something to me. Okay, there are a lot of interesting things to be spoken about tonight, and we'll see how many of them we get through. I'd like to start with the following. We read about the Jews leaving Egypt, and in the third verse of the Sedra, so on page 366, if you have an art scroll, so you have on page 366, if you have an art scroll, chapter 13, verse 19. Vayikach Moshe's atzmos Yosef ima. Moshe took the bones, meaning the remains of Yosef, with him. Ki ashbea ishbeas b'nei Yisrael, because he swore, or he made Bnei Yisrael really swear to him. God will come and God will redeem you. And you will bring out my remains with you. That is how Yosef has left this instruction. And it says that Moshe took these things with him. Moshe took these remains with him. The discussion to be had over here is very interesting. Rashi, definitely in another version of Rashi, I don't think Rashi says it over here, but Rashi says it somewhere else. He says the following. It says, Chacham leiv yikach mitzvos. The person that is clever will take mitzvos. And it's a very important point to be made right at the beginning, right from the word get-go, one of the first things that we learn in this week's Parasha. When the Jewish people were released, finally released from Egypt, God says to them, okay, you're now coming free from Egypt, and you have the chance now to go around. Not only do you have the chance to go around, you have a mitzvah to go around and to ask people for money. And I think, in general, and I'm taking this now on an assumption, but I don't think it's such a bad assumption. When the Jewish people got told, you finally get to go free, and you actually have a right to go and to ask people for money, and you should go and ask people for money, what do you think happened? I think everybody... I don't think people need to be told twice. We're supposed to do what? Go ask for money. Tonight, it's been such a busy evening. Now you want me to go out and start asking people for money? Are you sure? Are you certain? Yeah? Nobody needed asking a second time. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do at the same time? Moshe Rabbeinu had to try and find the remains of Yosef. The Medrash says that the Egyptians had cast a spell and made it sink to the bottom of the Nile, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to find it, and he found it, and he made it come back up. And now Moshe Rabbeinu has the remains of Yosef. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to take those remains with him to Eretz Yisrael. So he sadly never makes it to Eretz Yisrael, but that was the plan. The plan was Moshe Rabbeinu should take these remains and take them with him to Eretz Yisrael. And this is where Rashi quotes the following: Chacham leiv yikach mitzvos. Somebody who is clever will choose mitzvos. What do we mean somebody who's clever will choose mitzvos? Many times we are confronted with choices. We're almost always confronted with choices. If you're clever, you'll choose to do the right thing. If you live for the here and now, not necessarily. Right? So, for example, somebody might say, it's too difficult for me to get up in the morning to come to Shachris. Too difficult. I got work to do. I need to be at my desk for 6:30 or 7. I got whatever else it is to do. I can't. Okay, Mincha might be even more difficult. I can understand maybe, but Shachris, early morning, no, I have to be there early morning, and then I come home, and then I'm tired, and then, I know the rabbi's giving me a shir, and maybe, yeah, you're right, I should maybe come to the shir, but, either I could catch it on Facebook, maybe I will catch it, maybe I won't catch it. And we get busy with all sorts of things. Our life is so busy. It's interesting. All the things in our lives that we would have thought maybe would make our lives easier and would make our lives less stressful, actually make our lives a lot more stressful. I often have a conversation with my wife, and my wife says to me, says, I think you should get rid of your smartphone. And I say to her, but it makes my life a lot easier, but it also clutters my life. I think there's a very funny paradox when it comes to these kind of things. On the one hand, I said to her, the only reason I can have a certain amount of flexibility of going around is that I'm available and I have a little pocket computer in my pocket. My phone, if I get an email, I can deal with it. If the shul has a document they need me to look over to check, they send me an email, I pull out my phone, I check the document, ready to go. Within 5 minutes, I can send them back, I can call them, I can tell them what needs changing, etc., etc. I get WhatsApps on it, I can have all sorts of discussions. It unchains you from your office. There was a time within my rabbinate where I decided to give up on my smartphone. I was too busy with my phone, and I decided, you know what, I'm taking a break from it. And I took about a 6-month break from my smartphone at the time. And I must tell you that on the one hand, yes, it was great when you walk. There was nothing to do on your phone. You know, smartphone, people say it's a work tool. But at the same time, yes, it's something that we use for work. But you get all these YouTube videos, or you get all these WhatsApp clips that take up your time, and people send you rubbish, and people call you, and then you're walking down the road, and you look down at your phone, and you're busy, you're making phone calls, and if you're not making phone calls, you're looking for new apps, and if you're not looking for new apps, you're looking for this. It's so busy, these phones, that on the one hand, they're meant to make your life so much easier, and on the other hand, they make your life so much more difficult, right? It's not so straightforward that just because you have a mobile office on you, you're going to be so much more efficient. And I think they've shown, I saw somebody sent me this graphic of how many hours people spend on computers. And increasingly, I think they spend now 6.5 hours on average a day on computers. And of that, about 3.5 to 4 hours is on a phone. So we've had a shift from computers to mobile phones. So there is that shift. There's a very, very big shift. And I remember at the time when so people couldn't get, but it meant every time I had an email, every time I needed something doing, I was chained to this building. Every time I needed to do something, I need to come here. And it's a very, very difficult trade-off. What do? You unchain yourself from the building, but you chain yourself to something else. It's not like you've become a free man because you have a smartphone. You might not be necessarily needing to be here, but you're still very, very busy with all sorts of things. So when it comes to mitzvahs, when it comes to doing the right thing or to the wrong thing, you know, as I said before, we were talking about the phone, people get very, very busy. They just do. And the question is, you're so busy, you say, I'm too busy, I just don't have time to come to daven. I'm so busy, I just don't have time to learn. I'm so busy, I just don't have time to help somebody else. If you had a bit of foresight, you would say to yourself, wait a minute, is it really going to make a difference if I get to the office half an hour earlier? Alan, you're retired now. Do you look back and ever say to yourself, I wish I would have woken up at 7 instead of 6:30, or instead of 7:30, because that extra half an hour in the office would have made all the difference to me? Elliot, do you ever think that? I should have woken up earlier because another half an hour in the office, I would have had more money. Or I would have, you never look back, but you might have regrets, and people often do have regrets about some of the good things that they could have done with their time had they not been so focused on the wrong things. People many years after their parents pass away, or even when their parents pass away, or when the parents get too old to be able to do the things you want to with them. I remember I hear this rabbi, I've heard him say it more than once. He said he's been at funerals where the son or the daughter of the nifter and the niftara screamed out, Mommy, why did you leave me? I had so many plans. We were going to go see the world. I was going to take you to the west coast of America, and I was going to take you to the Far East. Why didn't you? Yeah. No, but I was too busy. Yeah, okay. Doing what? Working. Okay. You voted with your feet. You voted with your feet. What was important to you and what was unimportant to you. And it's important, therefore, to notice and to realize that when Hashem says, or when the Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu, you had the choice. Of course, there was a mitzvah also to take money. But everybody had the choice, and there was only one person in the entire Klal Yisrael that made the choice to go with the remains of Yosef as opposed to going with the money. The money was the easy mitzvah. That was the giveaway. Right? I told you, there's money lying outside. For every pound you collect, you get a mitzvah. Go to the car park. As you know, this year would empty out very, very quickly. There wouldn't be a look. It's a mitzvah, Rabbi. I know you're giving a shir, but this is a mitzvah. Everyone say, yeah. Once it comes to if money, you take money and you connect it with a mitzvah and you make it one big thing. It's like amazing, right? It's not only money; it's a mitzvah. It's both. It's so cool. But only Moshe Rabbeinu really realizes. Says, wait a minute. What's the greatest mitzvah that I can do now? What's the thing that I can do that is so special and so important? Taking the remains of Yosef Atzadik, that's really important. Yes, getting money is important also. But in getting money, very often, who are you getting the money for? Do you think Klai Yisrael was in there and said, we're getting money. This is all about God. Now you knock on the door and an Egyptian opens the door and says, look, I don't want anything. I don't want your expensive jewelry, but God asked me to take some things. I'm not sure that's what it looked like. I'm sure there was a lot of glee going on when people took the money, when people got involved in this whole thing. And so therefore, the Rashi tells us, but if you're a chacham leiv, if you have foresight, if you understand what's really valuable in this world, you will look for the mitzvahs to do. You won't look for the cop-outs. You won't look for the excuses. You'll try to focus your energies on what's important and on the things that you're not going to regret later. Okay? That's the first point that I wanted to speak about. Now here, there's a very interesting verse. This verse has troubled me, and every year I revisit this verse. And the verse is on, if you're in the Art Scroll Chumash, on page 370. And if you're not in the Art Scroll Chumash, if you want to look it up, you're in chapter 14, verse 15. 14, 15. Hi, Leon, come on in. Just starting another thing. Come on, sit down. Don't worry about it. Okay? So, there's a chair there? So we're on page 370. We're in verse 15. The Egyptians have now caught up with the Jews. They're running after the Jews, and the Jews are going through pandemonium, as you can imagine. Imagine standing, looking at the sea, having your enemies pursuing you from behind you and not knowing how you're going to survive this. It must have been an absolute terrible ordeal. I cannot imagine even the fear that was going through the Jews at the time. And the Jews are screaming to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is screaming to God. And then God says the following verse, which I always, every time when I read this, it becomes a very interesting thing. Vayomer Hashem a Moshe, and Hashem says to Moshe, Ma titzak elai, what are you screaming at me for? What are you making a fuss? Why are you saying these things? Daber el bnei Yisrael v'so, tell the Jewish people, go. Go where? Straight into the sea. Ve'ata you, harem esmatcha, raise your stick on Tez Yato, stretch out your hand on the water and split it. And they will go through the sea on dry land. But you read that first verse, Ma titzak elai, why are you screaming at me for? And many a time I've wondered to myself, coming from God, you'd expect what? You'd expect, Moshe Rabbeinu is praying. How wonderful. This is beautiful. We want Moshe Rabbeinu to pray. What else was Moshe Rabbeinu supposed to do? What, twist God's arm? There's no such thing as twisting God's arm. What can Moshe Rabbeinu do? How can Moshe Rabbeinu make sure that what he needs is going to be taken care of if he's not praying to Hashem? And Hashem says, stop praying. What are you praying for? Just go. Sounds a very strange thing to say. So how do we understand what Moshe Rabbeinu is being told over here? Ma titzak elai, why are you screaming at me? So I saw two explanations today, and those two explanations, I think, each one of them has its own lesson in it. The first explanation, going from the older to the younger, is from Seforno. Seforno was an Italian commentator, one of the Rishonim, and he says the following. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu was worried again. Do you remember what Moshe Rabbeinu's first worry was with God? God,
Speech.
Pardon? Before his speech even, correct? He did worry about his speech, but even before his speech, he says something else. Let's look back at the verse. We go back to Shmos, and we are on page 300 and... So this it wasn't his first comment. I'm making a mistake, I take it back. It wasn't the first thing that he said. We are on page 306, and we are in chapter 4, verse 1. And there the verse says, Vayan Moshe Vayomer, and Moshe answers back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, I want you to go and you want you to tell the Jewish people it's your time to be redeemed. Let's get moving. Vayan Moshe Vayomer, Moshe answers and he says, Vehein lo yaminu li, they won't believe me. Velo yishmu nekoli, and they will not listen to what I have to say. Ki yomer, they will say, Lo nira elecha Hashem, God has not appeared to you. Yeah? So what do we have over here? Moshe Rabbeinu is doubting the Jewish people. There's a great doubt. And Hashem's very upset with Moshe Rabbeinu. And the way we know that Hashem's upset with Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi tells us, is from the signs and the symbolisms that he gave him. So what was the first sign? The first sign was the staff turned into a snake. The snake is a sign of Lashon Hara, a sign of speaking evil about someone else. And that was what Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you spoke badly about the Jewish people. What right did you have to say these things about the Jews? Point number 1. Test number 2, take your hand, put it inside your shirt, your cloak, your tunic, whatever it might be. You take it out, and his hands had tzaras, leprosy. When did people get leprosy? Why do we often say, which Avera is leprosy connected with? Lashon Hara. There you go, he's telling him again, Lashon Hara. Why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? So Moshe Rabbeinu has already once had this issue. And the issue now rears its head again. Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, I said, listen to what these people just said to me. Even though it doesn't say it straightforward. Verse 10, look at verse 10. Ufaro Hikriv, we're on page 370 again, back to where we were. Ufaro Hikriv, Para comes close. Vayisov b'nei Yisrael's name, and Yisrael raise up their eyes, meaning Mitzrayim nosei acharem, and behold, the Egyptians are right behind them. Yeah, page 370, Roger, at the top of the page. Sorry. And they say they see Mitzrayim right behind them. Vayireu me'od, they are very afraid. Vayitzachu b'nei Yisrael Hashem, and they scream out to God. Vayomru Moshe, and here comes the comment that they make to Moshe Rabbeinu. What would you expect now? They're not happy with Moshe. They're like, what was that all about? Now, Moshe has already told them there's going to be a miracle. They are going to the sea. Moshe already told them. Yet, Vayomru Moshe, and they say to Moshe, what, were there no graves in Egypt? We had to have a mass grave here, right at the Yam Suf, at the Sea of Reeds? You want to bury us? We can, let's buy a big base island. We could all have a mass grave and finished. But were there no graves in Egypt? What did you bring us here for? What was that all about? What did you do to take us out of Egypt? Isn't this what we said? When we said to you, Mitzrayim, leave us alone, we'll just serve the Egyptians. We prefer to worship and to serve the Egyptians than to have to die in the desert. And now you've schlepped us out, and guess what? We are going to die in the desert. Thank you. Really well done. Brilliantly efficient. Really impressive. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu is getting. Every Jewish leader, by the way, we're going to speak about speech a bit later. Every Jewish leader has times where he's going to have people up his back. There's no such thing as a leader of the Jewish people that's not going to have complaints. But Moshe Rabbeinu, we read it over here already, Moshe Rabbeinu is getting some very serious complaints.
But he was right.
Pardon?
He was right. They were going to be, they were going to doubt, weren't they? We're going to lack faith.
They were, yeah, they were. They did lack faith.
Yeah.
They did lack faith at this moment, and they freaked out. I'm like, Moshe, what was that all about? What are we doing? Why have you created the situation where we are now in mortal danger? They're very upset with Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, God, I told you so. I told you these people won't listen to me. I'm sorry. I told you these people won't listen to me. I told you that these people are people that are stiff-necked. I told you these are difficult people that I can't deal with. Why did you put me in this situation where I'm stuck with these people? And what am I supposed to do with them? God, how am I supposed... And God says, shh, quiet. Why are you screaming at me? Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yiso. Yes, it may seem to you that the Jewish people don't believe you. It may seem to you that if you tell the Jewish people now, let's get moving, that the Jews will say, you're talking rubbish. But just say go. Watch. You think they're not following. You think they're not listening to you. You think that they're going to do their own thing. They are not going to do their own thing. They're going to follow along with you. You lead them, and they'll follow you. And if you think that they don't believe you, or you think that they, at the end of the day, are not going to do what you want them to do, go ahead. Try it. Yeah? You know the joke, Can you try the soup, please? The waiter, can you taste the soup? Well, is it too cold? Waiter, can you please taste the soup? Is it too hot? Can you taste the soup? Too much loction? Can you taste the soup? Too little loction? Can you taste the soup? Did you want knedlach? Can you please taste the soup? Is it too watery? Can you taste the soup? Is it too much chicken taste? Taste the soup! There's no spoon. Ha-ha! Yeah. Right? He's like, just go. Just go. Taste the soup. So what's the problem? It's just there's no problem. There's no spoon. Yeah, just go. Just get moving. Don't ask questions. Don't say that they're not going to listen. And this is an issue. On the one hand, this is an important thing to remember, that on the one hand, yes, you might many times encounter issues with the Jewish people. But they are still a people that you can count on when it comes to do the right thing. Many a time you'll say, oh, well, you know what, I don't know, people do or people don't, and sometimes they behave properly and sometimes they don't behave properly, and they should be doing this or shouldn't be doing this. They speak sometimes to the leaders the way they shouldn't speak to the leaders. They make all sorts of complaints, but there's still nobody like us. There's still nobody like the Jewish people.
They must have been frightened, though,
Oh, they were very frightened.
Yeah. So
And Moshe,
if they didn't follow the leader,
yes,
and they're effectively independent on their own,
and then they're really stuck.
So they had no choice anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
complained.
But even following the leader took a lot of. He's like, all right, guys, we're going through the sea. They're like, sea, water. How long can you tread water? Yeah, I can't really do this for very long. So they were very, very frightened. But Moshe Rabbeinu says they're so frightened, they're staging a mutiny. Whatever I'm going to say to them, they're not going to listen. To which Hashem says, that's not true. And stop moaning about the Jewish people and get moving, because you see, if you start moving, the Jews will follow you. If you moan, they'll moan with you. If you lead, they will follow. So lead. Stop screaming. That's the first explanation that's given by Safona, which I think is a beautiful explanation. And Ar Chaim HaKadosh says something else. He says, and this is something that comes up in many different commentators, the question was posed by the Malachim, the question was posed by the angels, what right or what merit do the Jewish people have to deserve for the sea to split for them and for the Egyptians to be drowned in the sea? It's not like the Jewish people were the most religious people out there. That sunk into terrible levels. They had served idols in Egypt. They weren't very religious people at all. And now they're going through the Sea of Reeds, and the sea splits for them. And the Malachim, the angels, who often prosecute when things seem unfair, say to Hashem, the Egyptians serve idols, the Jews serve idols. The Egyptians will get drowned, the Jews will be saved. That doesn't sound like fairness to me. Aren't you supposed to be the just God? Where is your justice? Explain it to me.
It wasn't their fault, though. God sent them into Egypt.
Yeah, okay, but they deteriorated spiritually when they got sent. You're right. It wasn't their fault they were in Egypt, but the fact that they deteriorated spiritually, that was their fault. They didn't need to deteriorate the way they did. So now they've deteriorated spiritually. So it's in limbo now. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, we're in limbo. I want to be able to get to the, I want to be able to get this sea split. Said Hashem to Ma titzak elai. You have two choices now. Choice number one, you pray. Choice number two, action. When you're stuck in a rut and you're praying, sometimes that's not going to get you very far. But action makes a big difference. And that's what God is saying to Moshe Rabbeinu. If you mobilize the Jewish people and you get them to go into the sea, you get them to start traveling from one side to the other, then suddenly they will become worthy of this splitting of the sea. As long as you're standing on the side and you're praying, you might not be worthy to go into the sea. But the belief and the trust that you put in God to say, God, you said that sea is going to split for us. Let's walk. That's very, very different. That's very, very different. You know, they tell this story. There was a fellow who was the greatest tightrope walker. And he came to this shtetl and they set up this tightrope from between two buildings. And he says, okay, do you believe I can do it? Do you believe the great, whatever you call him, is going to make it across? And everyone's saying, they're going, we believe in you. And he starts walking and he walks all the way across. And he gets to the other side and everyone's cheering and everyone goes, wow, that's amazing. He says, okay, do you believe that the great rope walker is now going to walk on that tightrope between the two buildings backwards? We believe in you. Pardon? Yeah, he walks backwards. Amazed. Everyone's cheering. Then he says, you know what? I'm now going to be blindfolded. Who believes in me that I can do this blindfolded? We believe in you. This is great. And he puts on the blindfolds and he walks across the rope. And everyone's really amazed. And then he says, and now I'm going to walk backwards and blindfolded. And he does it backwards and blindfolded. And then they're amazed. And he says, and now for my most amazing trick. I want, do you believe in me? We believe in you. They all getting them really riled up. He says, great. I want one of you to come and to sit on my shoulders as I walk across this tightrope from one side to the other. I want to volunteer. What happened? Don't believe that much. Exactly. And that's where he says, you guys don't believe in me. It's easy to stand on the bottom, watch a guy go across a tightrope and go, you go, you go. All right, you didn't go. It's either he did go or he didn't go. Either you'll make it across or you won't make it across. Big deal. We believe in you. Yeah. Once it comes right, come on, somebody sit on my lap. There's one little kid that says me and everybody else goes, No. Suddenly that whole emunah goes away. It's easy to sit there and to talk. It's actually easy to stand here and to pray. It probably was a lot easier to stand there and to pray to God, God, do something. So God says, okay, start walking through the sea. What? Yeah, walk, get moving. You just straight? Yeah. That's already a lot more complicated. That's already a whole different story, a whole different level of belief. Says Arachaim, the level of belief necessary for action is a lot greater than the level of belief necessary for prayer, because everyone can pray. Everyone can pray, but action is a whole different story. Action is that much more potent. Action is that much more difficult. And if you can find somebody that's willing to act upon it, that's great. So move. Yeah.
Can this be applied to like a lesson, the commandments? So, for instance, we're commanded to put tefillin on. So
right.
It's something that we've got to do.
Yeah.
Do it.
Right.
And you understand why you're doing it.
Right. God
said, do it.
Yeah.
And various other, obviously, a lot of other commandments that are doing, saying do things, do this, do that, and other. Can that be learned out from the certain?
I don't know, because I think in the end of the day, doing something, even putting on tefillin, in inverted commas, is easy. It's not something that requires a great amount of belief or trust in God. You just put them on in the same way you can come to davening. And I know people that say they come to davening and they don't believe in God. Now, I don't really believe that. Nobody would come to davening if they really, really didn't believe in God. Because you wouldn't come in and say, oh, great, as Rav Nachman used to say, oh, great and mighty rock, the most amazing rock in the world. If we were talking about a stone, if we were talking about something that didn't exist, you'd feel stupid. So why would you do that if you didn't believe that God existed? So it's easy to do these things when it needs something that you need real belief, motivation. You need to put yourself in it. That's a lot more difficult. So it's not every action that can go along with this.
Well, give me an example.
I guess it's
Something today that you would, in order to do it, you'd have to believe. Is there a commandment that you could...
That's it. So yeah, we can speak. I mean, it's almost trusting in Hashem is one of those things. So trust in Hashem can show itself in different ways. Trusting in Hashem can show itself in different ways. Meaning, you can show your trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu in saying, I'm going to work for a living. Okay. How much am I going to work for a living? How often am I going to work for a living? What am I going to do when I work? There's a whole bunch of things that, So if you say, look, I believe that God ordains how much a person makes. And so therefore I will put in the amount of hours necessary to be able to make whatever I am, but I don't need to get to the office at 6 and leave the office at 10 to be able to make my money. I can work normal working hours. And I can't say I'm going to go to the office at 10 and leave at 11 and I'm going to make as much money as I need to.
Could you relate what Leon said to eating kosher, for instance? So if you get somebody that's really, really poor and really can't afford it,
yes,
but they make the massive effort to make sure they eat kosher, is that not making the effort?
Yeah, that is making an effort. That is making an effort above and beyond what you know.
Yeah.
So having that belief.
Yeah, saying I believe it's important enough to spend that much money on it, even when I find it very, very difficult to push myself. Yeah. That kind of
Doesn't
thing.
it say in the parak, according to the effort is the reward?
Absolutely. According to the effort is the reward.
Right, can I ask?
Yeah, go on.
Come back to this, what you're saying. Before Moshe spoke to Hashem and he told him to walk into the sea.
Yeah.
They weren't supposed to, they didn't know what they were supposed to do. Maybe they're supposed to have turned around and fight with the Egyptians.
No, I think Moshe Rabbeinu knew that that they were going to come and that something was going to happen and they were going to go through the sea. But still Moshe Rabbeinu was worried. What's going to happen now? Like to speak about one last thing. Let's just see which one of the things we're going to speak about. Okay, I think this one we won't have time to speak about. Maybe we'll speak about it on Shabbos. The Jews were very, very afraid. And I find it very interesting in this fear that the Jews had, that I think if you think about it psychologically, there's a real fear going on over here. And even though the Jewish people had seen all these miracles, they're still afraid. But why are they still afraid? All these miracles on the one hand, you saw God making the miracle or the plague of blood, and then the frogs, and then the lice. At one point or another, you'd expect the Jewish people to say, look, we got God on our side. We're not so worried. And yet you see the Jewish people throughout the entire story over here are very worried. So why are they so worried?
No belief.
Pardon?
Lack of belief.
Okay, one of the things we speak about is lack of belief. Rav Hirsch speaks about this in the beginning of the Seder, but I want to speak about something else which I found very interesting. I thought about this year. I don't know how many of you had or didn't have certain things you were afraid of when you were children. When you were a little kid, I don't know, sometimes you get scared. I'll give you an example. I remember this still from being a little kid, and even now, I wouldn't say I suffer from it, but there's something that I don't enjoy. When I was a kid, we used to go for kaparas before Yom Kippur. Hi, Phil. We used to go for kaparas Yom Kippur. Pardon? Oh, I didn't get close. But I went into this room, and we used to go into this horrible room. I don't know if you've ever been into a room with like 1,000 chickens. And the room, and they were all in these little batteries. They never gave the chickens the very nice it wasn't like free range chickens. They were pretty squished. And I was in this room. I still remember you're in this room, and the noise is just like awful, because you're inside this room, and there's like hundreds of chickens going. They're all clocking away, and the smell was just awful. Anyway, you get this, it's just pardon. The smell is awful. So if you do kaparas in MH car park, the smell is not great, but look, you live with it. But if you're in an enclosed area, I remember, and the shochet was there, and they were plucking the feathers off the hens, and it was just awful. And we went there for kaparas, and it was freaking me out. It really was freaking me out.
How old were you?
I can't remember how old it was, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that region.
Very young.
Between 5 and 9, something like that. And I'm in this room, and it's really getting to me. And my father, it was my turn. So my sisters had already, and my father went and he got another chicken, and he's holding the chicken, and he turns around, and I bolted out of the room. And he's standing there with his chicken, and here's this 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid that's run out onto the streets of Vienna. I'm walking I didn't run to the street. I'm walking on the pavement. But I'm running down the pavement. He goes, stop! And he's running through the pavement with his chicken in his hands, like, get back here! And he finally caught up to me, and he held me down, and he said, that was the last time my family went to Kaparas with chickens until I left to yeshiva. And I still, nowadays, I do kaparas with money. I don't like chickens. I'm not, and in general, I'm not a big fan of birds. I find birds very, I don't know, they just don't like them. It could be. It could be. He didn't try to traumatize me. It could be that I was traumatized from it. But I remember, even now, I don't like birds. I like to eat them. I don't really like them a lot. You go to where would be Trafalgar Square, and you put out your hand and you get the pigeons. No, none of that.
They probably don't like you either.
I'm not so sure. If I put out the right food, I think they'll come and they'll eat it. Yeah. But just doesn't get, it gets to me. Right? There are kids that I know that don't like the dark when they were little kids. They're always afraid. And even as they get older, and even sometimes when they become teenagers, they won't admit it. They'll always keep the door open just that little bit, because you don't know in the dark what's going to happen. And you're 16 years old. Grow up, No, but you never know what happens in the dark. Yeah? Because old fears remain. And the Jewish people had gone through years and years of torment under the Egyptian rulers. And they whipped them, and they beat them, and they made them work hard. And the Jewish people had a very, very rough time. And now they've left, and they feel a certain freedom. And they turn around and they see their tormentors behind them. What's going to automatically happen? They're going to freeze. They're going to fear. So you see, but how does that make sense? Wait a minute. Don't you remember? Blood, frogs, hailstones, boils, darkness, death of the firstborn.
But if fear overcame them,
fear is fear. Fear's a different story. Fear's a very, very strong emotion. Sometimes, and we're not always in control of it even. We might think we'd like to be in control of it, but we're not really in control of fear. We can't really, sometimes we can control it, but sometimes we can't. Like many other things, anxiety, depression. Say to people, I'm anxious, don't be anxious. Yeah, then you don't understand it. Fear is the same thing. If you really have a fear, if these people, they had the fear of God. That sounds the wrong thing. They had but they were afraid for their lives from these Egyptians. They really were, because the Egyptians could beat them, and they could throw them into the sea. They could do whatever they wanted to with them.
Also, isn't it, all this fear, it's all physical fear of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
It's physical.
Yeah.
And Hashem is spiritual, where you
Yeah.
can't see.
Yeah, they weren't up to that yet. They weren't up to that level yet. So the physical fear was something that was going to be a lot stronger for them. I mean, the other example that I would give you, and I know people, they had very strict teachers when they were kids. They're still afraid of them when they're adults. But when you were a kid, there was this lady or this Mrs. whoever she might have been. Oh, she was a tough teacher. She was a tough cookie, and she screamed and she got her way, and you were really afraid. And then you grow up, your head taller than her, and she walks in and goes, "Oh, I hate this woman." What do you mean you hate her? You're a foot taller than her. What you gonna do? Yell at you? You're a grown man with kids. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. That fear that remained with them, And that's what we speak about over here as well. That the Jewish people had this fear from beforehand. So you say, why were they still afraid? That kind of thing dies hard. It's very, very hard for somebody to be, to just drop away from that fear. Yes, I used to be afraid of this. I'm not afraid of it anymore. It takes time. It takes getting over that trauma. You can't just get over the trauma. Yeah, just get over it. No. You can't just get over it. And that's the fear over here. And that's why the Jewish people were so traumatized and couldn't move and couldn't do anything because of it. Yeah, Leon.
No, just thinking that the Holocaust survivors who'd experienced the camps,
Yeah.
and that fear and and terrible things happened, like it did it in Egypt when when they were there. That fear remained with them the whole life.
There are many people that had nightmares for years, decades. Their whole lives they had nightmares, and that fear never left them. Never left them. And I'll tell you something. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of Holocaust survivors. If you said to them, "Come, we'll go back to Auschwitz," they couldn't. They couldn't face it. You say, but the Germans are gone. The war is over. It's 50 years later. You won. You have a family. I'm not walking back.
Even when they're liberated, they probably thought, "Can we believe this?"
Yeah.
We're not sure. Here's the people to rescue. We don't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Yeah, very, very difficult. The whole
Same
thing was
sort
very,
of
very
situation,
difficult.
The
Yeah.
fear that they experienced was there.
Yeah.
Still.
And it was still there. It remained with them forever. I don't think a lot of them got the help that they needed psychologically to be able to overcome that fear. I'm not sure they ever could have. Maybe they could, maybe they couldn't have. I think many people in that generation just suppressed it and said, look, it's nobody's business. We'll manage. It's fine. Maybe. But, in the end of the day, they live with that fear for the rest of their lives. And it was something that could never get away from.
Because they wouldn't talk about it.
Part of it, they wouldn't talk about it. Part of it, they wouldn't share that. It would need extensive therapy. They went through tremendous trauma.
But they still followed Moshe.
They still followed Moshe with all that, which was the amazing thing.
Yeah.
Even with all that fear and everything, they still followed Moshe Rabbeinu, which is amazing. Anyway, we'll leave it for that. Thank you very much for joining me. And please God, we'll continue next week.